Hey, welcome to our final week in the Habits series. This is the middle school ministry from Mount Pleasant Christian Church. My name is Mike Sheely. I'm the middle school pastor, and we are thrilled that you're connecting with us through this video on YouTube. I want to remind you that you can answer questions and engage with others through our Minga website at app.minga.io. If you haven't already joined us, you need the invite code ULPO. Then you can hop in, you can see things, get alerts, comment, share photos and thoughts all on this little site. Now, we also have all of our notes for this lesson, just like every week's lesson, in the YouVersion Bible app. If you pull it up, it looks just like this. It has the notes you can add to, you can leave comments, you can leave prayer requests. Very interactive tool that goes right along with this lesson. So check that out. And if you don't quite know how to get that, if you go to mpcc5678.com/online, we've got some tips in there on how to pull up the notes for the Bible app. All right, like I said, week 6 of our habits series is our last week, so we're going to start off with a review challenge. Whether you are at home by yourself, you got some family or friends around, and we want you to try to fill in the blank and see how much you remember from the previous 5 weeks of this series, okay? And then when we're done, you can post your score on Minga and let us know how you did. From week 1, we said that one of our first habits we want to develop is blank out with Jesus. What was that? Do you remember? That was hanging out with Jesus, spending time reading your Bible, hanging out, getting to know what Jesus said and did and thought through the scriptures. We said that spending time with Jesus can happen anytime, anywhere. I gave you that one if you were paying attention. That's anytime, anywhere. You've got enough resources, you can spend time with Jesus anywhere, not just at church. Okay, and this is one of 2 reading plans we gave you. If you look closely, this is the For What Jesus reading plan. You'll see it's only about 1 chapter of reading per block, which makes it the 4-month reading plan. You read for about 5 minutes a day, and in 4 months, you'll read through all 4 Gospels. How are you doing with this? Let us know on Minga whether you're doing this one or the 4-week one, or if you haven't started, we'll give you a link later. You can go on and download this and get started today. And it's been the next 4 weeks or 4 months hanging out with Jesus, getting to know him better. All right, week 2, you said it was all about blank church. What was that blank? It was attending church. Whether you're coming in person on site or you're connecting with us like this through YouTube and our online services, attending church, being a part of what's going on at church. We said that blank is the reason we go. There's a lot of benefits and a lot of good things to go to church. What's the most important reason we go to church? That's Jesus, to spend time worshiping him, getting to know him better, living like him. All right. We said that we gave you a challenge. If you just kind of go to church or you participate online occasionally, can you make it a habit to do that once a month, where every month you're connecting to church? And if that's already your habit, can you double that and try to get connected at least twice a month, whether you're in person or online? If twice a month is your habit and you're able, then try to do that 3 times a month. And if 3 times is what you do, try to make it where every week it's a habit, just a normal thing that you do, that you and your family are a part of church. And we know that some of you, because of custody or sports or sickness or whatever's going on, quarantine, you're not able to be physically at church every week. But that's why we provide resources like this video here on YouTube and the things through our website, MPCC5678.com, so you can still stay connected and involved even from a virtual setting when you're not here in person. Okay? All right, week 3, halfway kind of through this point. We said our goal was to be or being what? That word would be generous. We want to give away. We talked a lot about money, but also our time and our talents and our abilities. And we said one of the practical ways you can do this is to participate in Mount Pleasant Christian Church's ministry called Blank for $1. And what's that? Change for $1. Change, where you give $1 per person in your family each week, and that money gets used to help a family somewhere around $4,000 every week because of all the people who give and are a part of this. And you can do that right now. All right, week 4, we said it was blank in healthy friendships. What was that first word? It almost sounds like a money word. That was investing, spending time and attention into people that are close to us. Week 5, last week, we said it was all about blank my story. And that would be telling my story. And we gave you 3 tips when it comes to telling your story, your life story, whether you've encountered Jesus a long time ago or this is all new to you, you've got a story to share. So our first tip was blank about your story. Do you remember what this was? It was think. Think about your story. Kind of process your thoughts so you kind of organize what you're going to say. And then we said when telling your story, be blank and respectful. This one was be honest. Tell the truth. Don't edit things out that you think might be confusing or things that are not unfinished. Tell your honest story. That will probably connect with people much better than some kind of polished version. And our third tip was remember that it's all about not me, not you, but Jesus. It's all about showing what he's done and is doing in our lives. We gave this little resource. The colored one is one you can pick up in person. The black and white one is one you can download from our resource site. These habits, these telling my story guides. Okay? All right. Remember, you can post your score on Minga. Let's dive into week 6, serving others. We're going to look at a passage from John chapter 13. So while you're pulling that up in your physical Bible or Bible app, it's in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then John. And then once you get there, chapter 13, we're going to be in the first 15 verses of John 13. Let me give a little background. If you were to have people over to your house or you go out to a restaurant to eat, we typically sit in a chair at a table and that's how we eat. But in Jesus' day, especially as they're celebrating this Passover meal, they would actually be sitting on the floor, inclined, kind of laying to the side, and all around this horseshoe-shaped table. And so as you're inclined to this side, somebody's feet are right here next to you, and so you'd want those clean. Now, they're going to be behind you, not in front of your face while you're eating, but they're close enough that they're going to smell. And so just from walking down the dusty roads in their sandals, it was the lowest servant's job as you came in as part of hospitality to make sure that your feet got washed so they were clean and you're ready for the meal. Maybe you go to somebody's house and it's just normal that when you walk in, you take off your shoes and you only walk in socks around the house to keep the house clean. Same kind of idea, but because they walked with sandals, they actually had to clean off their feet because the shoes weren't the only things that had that dirt. So kind of keep that in mind as we go in here as Jesus is celebrating this Passover meal with his disciples the night before he's going to be arrested and crucified, and then kind of see what happens here. So John 13, 1 through 15. Before the Passover celebration, Jesus knew that his hour had come to leave this world and return to his Father. He had loved his disciples during his ministry on earth, and now he loved them to the very end. It was time for supper, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, that he had come from God and would return to God. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Now this sounds kind of weird, right? Because Jesus just said, John recorded that Jesus knew he had ultimate power from God. He's in charge of everything. But the actions he's doing here, taking off his robe, wrapping a towel around his waist, putting water into a basin, he's acting like that lowest servant would, that when you came in would wash your feet. This has to throw the disciples off because the guest of honor was not the one who would do this, but yet that's what Jesus is doing. So let's go on a little further. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he had around him. When Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" This is very confusing to him. Jesus replied, "You don't understand now what I'm doing, but someday you will." "No," Peter protested, "you'll never wash my feet." He's like, no, this is not something for you to do. You're too respectful to do this. And Jesus says, "Unless I wash you, you won't belong to me." So now Peter flips and he says, "Then wash my hands and my head as well, Lord, not just my feet." He wants more cleansing, more connection with Jesus. Jesus replies, "A person who's bathed all over does not need to wash except for the feet to be entirely clean. And you disciples are clean, but not all of you." For Jesus knew who would betray him. That is what he meant when he said, "Not all of you are clean." After washing their feet, he put on his robe again, sat down and asked, "Do you understand what I was doing?" Clearly the answer to that question was no. It was a rhetorical question. He asked it already knowing the answer, so he goes on to explain. "You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet." Sounds kind of weird, but hold on to a minute here. "I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you." You might ask some questions, so let's kind of dig into this. As we talk about serving others, if you've been around church, you may have heard this passage before. If you're new to church, this might be a really strange thing to read about Jesus. So let's see what he's saying here. The first thing we want to learn from this is that Jesus is our role model. He was willing to take the place of the lowest servant for this meal to wash the disciples' feet. So nothing should be below us. Well, and here's a question. Do you think Jesus wanted his disciples to literally wash each other's feet? Well, in his day and age, maybe. Like if someone came to their house and had a meal, they should be willing to be as humble as he was and to go and wash their feet. But that wasn't the bigger picture, and here's what we know about that. Because that wasn't one of the things that got passed on through church history. That wasn't one of the things that we see that happen anymore with the disciples in a big way. He was more talking about that humility, about serving others and putting them first. So what's one thing that you know for sure about Jesus based on just this scripture? If all that the Bible you had was just these 15 verses in John 13, what would you know about Jesus? His humility, his love for others, his patience and compassion, his teaching. Take some time to think about that. Jesus is our role model, not in washing feet, but in being a servant. I've been around people at churches who said, yeah, don't worry about the mess. We pay someone to take care of that. And I've been around people in churches who went over and cleaned up a mess just because it was there. Who had more of a servant attitude? The one who cleaned up the mess. I've tried to follow that example because I realized that person was following Jesus' example. What does that look like in your life? Does that mean putting up the dishes even if it's not your responsibility? Does it mean taking out the trash when it's full, even if that's your sister or brother's job? Does that mean holding the door open for somebody else or being willing to go last in line? What for you is something you would never think about doing, but would really appreciate if somebody did for you? Take the initiative like Jesus and be a servant. All right, number two, after we process that Jesus is our role model, we need to realize that Jesus didn't play favorites. And I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I hear about some parents all the time, but look at this. Why is it significant that Jesus washed Judas' feet, the one who was going to betray him? It wasn't like Jesus wanted to avoid Judas so the disciples would have this awkward conversation. From what we know, the disciples didn't quite realize that Judas was the one who was going to betray him. But Jesus realized it at this point. And so he still washed Judas' feet. When we serve people, it's not based on whether they deserve it or not, whether we like them or not, whether we're even friends or not. We serve people because there's a need that we can meet for them, and that's how we show them Jesus' love. In fact, I would say from these scriptures that when we love somebody and serve them who can't pay us back, who can't return the favor later, that's when we're most like Jesus. Well, think about the second question. How can service change your attitude towards people whom you might ignore or overlook? If you're to serve somebody, then your eyes are looking around for opportunities to help somebody who has a need. That means you're going to pay attention to someone you might normally ignore or overlook. And Jesus cared a lot about people who were ignored and overlooked. So if you choose to serve, you'll choose to live more like Jesus. And that's the point of this whole series, right? So Jesus didn't play favorites. The third thing when it comes to serving others is that we need to serve with a good attitude. Jesus continued to have a humility and a love for these disciples throughout this whole experience, even though he knew what he was about to face with the crucifixion. How has or can serving others draw you closer to Jesus? Do you agree with this or disagree? Can serving others draw you closer to Jesus? What do you think? And then if you have a hard time with a good attitude when it comes to serving, because sometimes we don't want to take out the trash. We don't want to deal with the mess. How can prayer help you have a healthy attitude towards serving others? How can talking to God help you get refocused and be more like Jesus? Serve with a good attitude. Here's the deal. We can talk more about this, but the bottom line is we look at Jesus' example in John 13. He was willing to do the job of the lowest servant, even though he was the guest of honor at this Passover meal, to serve others. That's the example we need to follow and not play favorites and have a good attitude, serving others, whatever that looks like. Well, that's the sixth in 6 habits we've been talking about. So let's do a quick review before we wrap things up for today. And just a reminder, if you go to mpcc567.com/habits, we're going to keep that up even after this series is done. So you can always go back and find resources related to each of these habits to help you to get to know Jesus better and to live more like him. All right? Remember back in week 1, which is all the way back at the beginning of this year, the beginning of January, we set out one of our goals is to hang out with Jesus. And we gave you 2 tools, a 4-month reading plan and a 4-week reading plan. These are not just New Year's resolutions. These are not just January things. These are resources you can use any time of the year. So look at these resources, download them, get started today. If you haven't started yet, grab one today. If you picked one up and lost one, if you printed it out and it's gone, print another one out. Get started today and then spend the next 4 weeks or the next 4 months getting to know Jesus, and it will change you. This one is foundational for everything else we do, okay? There's also some great reading plans in the Bible app you can use. This is just kind of a starting point for you, and if you download these PDFs, they've got QR codes in there for some helpful videos from our friends at Bible Project. Second habit we said was attending church, and there's no great resource for that. You just get connected. Get here on YouTube, get to the church in person when your family's comfortable with that. And remember, the challenge was make it a habit to be intentional once a month. If you already do, try to double that to make that twice a month. If twice a month is your habit, try to make that 3 times. And then if that's your habit, try to make it every week. And again, if you can't be here in person, utilize resources like this video for you to attend and connect. And then if you really want to be involved, use that Minga resource to have a conversation and share your thoughts, just as you would if you were here in person with a small group or with one of our stations so that you can be connected to what's going on at church. The third habit we said was being generous. And we gave this kind of just basic equation, this pie chart. Take 10% of what you have and give it to church or God. Take another 10% and put it into savings. And then the other 80%, do with whatever you want. You can spend it. You can give more to church. You can put more in savings. If you develop this kind of habit now with the money that you have as a middle schooler, as a preteen, it'll be that much easier to make that your habit when you're in high school and as you go on into college and become an adult. And then we said the challenge for you right now, and I hope you're taking this seriously, is to figure out a way for you to come up with $4 to $5 a month so you can give $1 for you every week and participate in our Change for a Dollar ministry. We said that your dollar may not seem like much, but if everybody in our ministry gave $1, we'd be giving somewhere around $150 to $200 a month, and we put that in with the rest of the church. We're able to help out families with the amount of around $4,000 a week because of what you contribute. Wouldn't you like to be a part of that? How awesome would that be? All right. Week 4, we said invest in healthy friendships. We have this resource you can download, just a friend page. You put your name in the middle. On the left, you put 2 friends who either know Jesus or are getting to know Jesus. On the right, you put 2 friends who don't know Jesus yet. You pray for all 4 of those people, and you make sure you spend time investing in them, spending time with them, giving them your attention, getting to know them so that you can help all of them together get to know and follow Jesus. That's how we invest in healthy friendships. And remember to always try to be the kind of friend that you'd like to have in others. Last week was telling my story, and we gave you this resource. You can download it from our habits page. It's a resource to help you walk through how to tell your story so you can do it pretty easily in 2 minutes or less, and then be ready to share more if someone asks you and wants to know more details. Today, we talked about serving others and really focused on the attitude that Jesus wants to have. But we have a resource that we're working on right now that'll be available soon that deals with your shape. It's not like triangles and rectangles and squares, but it's how God has made you so wonderful, unique, and complex that can help you. There's times we need to help and serve where it's needed. Sometimes we got to shovel snow. Sometimes we've got to watch little babies in the nursery. Sometimes we've got to just open doors for people, whatever. But there's also times you can figure out what would you really enjoy doing. And let me give you this acrostic real quick. The S stands for spiritual gifts. When you become a Christian, you get your sins forgiven, God's Spirit comes and lives inside of you, and it gives you these gifts, these abilities that come from God to help the church grow. And we're going to explain more of that in this resource. Then you also have a heart or a passion. There are things that really excite you that may not excite other people, or maybe not a lot of people. What's something that really gets you excited? That's your passion, that's your heart, and that can drive how you serve. And then you have abilities, things that are just naturally easy for you to do, and things that you've learned how to do. How can those help you figure out how to serve? Personality. Whether you are energized by being around a lot of people or you really love being one-on-one with somebody, all of that spectrum are needed when it comes to ministry, and we'll help you figure that out and how to best serve. And then experiences. God can use both the good things and the bad things that you've experienced in life to help you minister to other people. And so we got this shape resource coming. It's going to involve some teaching videos and some resources for you to sit down and figure out, what is my shape? How could I best serve in the church? All right, that's all a part of our habits series. These resources will be up. We'll be adding to it at mpcc5678.com/habits. And again, you can interact with people through Minga. That's our middle school ministry for this week, for February 6th and 7th of 2021. Thanks for joining us. Let me pray for you. We'll wrap it up for today. God, thank you for our time together. We are so thankful that you came down and humbled yourself in the form of Jesus. And then Jesus was willing to be that humble servant, caring for the outcast and the overlooked, even doing the simple task of washing feet for his disciples when nobody else did that at the meal. Help us, God, not to be weirded out by that story of washing feet, but to focus on Jesus was willing to be that humble and serve others. How can we imitate him this week and serve others with that same kind of love and humility that help us to look like Jesus? Amen. Thanks for joining us today. We will see you next time. We've got a brand new series getting ready to start about worship called Anthem, and that will be starting next week. We'll see you then.